As early as 1908, plant-based athletes were starting to claim their first Olympic golds.
Are you still sticking to your vegetarian diet, Mary?
Very rigidly, yes.
And do you find that's a benefit to you, do you?
Greatly, or I wouldn't do it.
I changed my diet to a vegan diet, and I set all of my personal bests at 30 years old.
The oldest man ever to win a world or Olympic men's.
And there were current Olympians too. Morgan Mitchell is the two-time Australian 400-meter champion.
Here comes Morgan Mitchell. Champion, this is very, very fast.
She also represented Australia at the 2016 Summer Olympics.
A lot of people had doubted me when I first became vegan, but my energy levels increased incredibly. And my iron, my B12, everything that people said would become deficient were amazing. I thought, I'm going to make sure I'm beating them all on the track.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions in sports nutrition is that we have to have animal protein, and in particular meat, to get big and strong and perform at a high level. That's just clearly not true.
There was also Dotsie Bausch, an 8-time USA national cycling champion and 2-time Pan American gold medalist.
I grew up in Kentucky, so that's the land of casseroles and barbecue and meat. So when I transitioned over to an entirely plant-based diet, I wasn't sure if I was gonna survive. And I actually became like a machine. I got up from being able to move about 300 pounds on the inverted leg sled to moving 585 pounds, 60 reps, times 5 sets.
One of the arguments about animal-based proteins being superior is that plant-based proteins aren't complete, so you're not going to get all the amino acids, and that's a fallacy as well.
Even in the UFC, this idea that meat makes you tough had become a focal point for one of the most anticipated fights in the history of the sport, between Conor McGregor, the world champion in 2 different weight classes, and Nate Diaz, who accepted the fight with only 11 days' notice after McGregor's original opponent pulled out. McGregor was a big meat eater.
It's steaks every day for me. Steaks for breakfast, steaks for lunch, steaks for brunch, grass-fed, massaged, beef, all day long.
Diaz was on a plant-based diet.
Eat your vegetables.
And McGregor had a field day with it.
This man, let's see, can he fight? I'm a lion in there. Your little gazelle friends are gonna be staring through the cage, looking at your carcass getting eaten alive.
McGregor was feeding off a stereotype that was pretty much universal.
You hit like a vegetarian.
Here we go!
When Nate Diaz stepped into the cage to face Conor McGregor, the Vegas oddsmakers had Diaz as the 4-1 underdog.
He caught him again with a right hook. And another left. And again with a combination. Diaz trying to finish with a submission. He got it! That's it! He's got the shot! Nate Diaz! He's done it! Nate Diaz beats Conor McGregor! Oh my goodness! Nate Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Lou is 60 years old, not far off my father's age.
Most guys my age can keep up with the grandchildren. My grandchildren can't keep up with me. When I went from an animal-based diet to a plant-based diet, my blood pressure went down to like 110/70. My heart rate, sometimes it's been under 50, like 48, 47. I'm more focused, I'm more relaxed, and I noticed that I have a lot more energy because of the plant-based diet.
There was another guy my dad's age who had also made a big change.
I ate a lot of meat. I ate my 10, 15 eggs a day. And, I had my 250 grams of protein a day because I weighed 250 pounds.
One and only Arnoldt Schwarzenegger.
But as I got older and as I started reading up on it, I recognized the fact that you really don't have to get your protein from meat or from animals, as far as that goes. So we start going more in a direction of a vegetarian kind of a diet. Now we're doing it the right way, with the right spices. All of a sudden, I love it much more than the meat. And, the cholesterol went down to around 109. It was the lowest that it ever was in my entire life, at almost 69.
What we eat has a major impact on our health and our well-being in every way we can measure. People who eat a diet that's high in animal protein have a 75% increased risk of premature death from all causes, and a 400% to 500% increased risk of death from most forms of cancer, prostate, breast, colon cancer, as well as type 2 diabetes.
I've never eaten a piece of meat in my entire life, and I've never had an issue with testosterone. I've gotten blood tests, and all my levels are right where they need to be, and clearly I don't have any trouble building muscle.
Studies comparing men who eat animal foods with men who don't have consistently demonstrated no difference in testosterone levels.
This is what I always heard, like, you can't go lean, you can't go shredded vegan because you have so much carbs. But I'm standing here in the best shape of my life, easy.
I already knew that processed carbs, like white flour and sugar, can lead to weight gain. But what I didn't realize is that unprocessed carbohydrates like oats, bananas, and sweet potatoes are associated with decreased body fat. 5,000 miles away, I found another strength athlete named Pátrik Babbúmian. Pátrik is one of the strongest men on the planet, with multiple world records, including the front hold, the keg lift, and the log lift. How could one of the world's strongest men be so powerful, eating only plants? No meat, no milk, no eggs.
Most of the training I do at home because it's just more practical.
Someone asked me, how could you get as strong as an ox without eating any meat? And my answer was, have you ever seen an ox eating meat?
It's hard to fathom how strong Pátrik really is. It's almost superhuman. When I met Pátrik, he was training to break the world record for the heaviest weight ever carried by a human being. To break that record, Pátrik would have to carry 1,224 pounds. That's the weight of a horse, a distance of 33 feet.
The thing with the yoke is, if you really go insane with the weight, when you do a step and all the weight is on one leg, it sometimes feels like your bones could just break. It's probably one of the most terrifying things that we do at strongman events.
6 months into my new diet, my strength, endurance, and recovery were better than ever. My dad's health was on the mend. Even my wife and kids were on board. But I was also pissed off. Why didn't everyone know about this? And then I remembered my grandfather, who died of heart failure at the age of 63 after more than 4 decades of smoking. A paratrooper in World War II, he got hooked on cigarettes during a time when young people like him were being sold the idea that smoking was actually good for you.
Babe Ruth, idol of millions.
To sell this idea, the tobacco industry turned to famous athletes, the ultimate symbols of fitness and health.
After a game, Carl Furillo of the Dodgers looks for a mild cigarette, a Camel, of course.
But right around the time Babe Ruth died from throat cancer in his early 50s, the scientific evidence was starting to stack up, so a new marketing plan was required.
According to this nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette.
For years, the tobacco industry said that their cigarettes did not cause cancer. And they trotted out their own paid researchers to come out with statements to confuse the issue.
Despite their efforts, cigarette ads were eventually banned from sports broadcasting, just in time for another big industry to step up to the plate and start playing the same game.
What's in the bag? Big Mac? Play for it.
With a new generation of athletes, including me. But it wasn't long before the evidence against animal foods started stacking up as well.
Now that playbook is being used by the food industry.
She's from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association.
They're going to hire their so-called
I'm
experts
first of all a registered dietitian and nutrition scientist, and I'm a mom.
to create just enough confusion.
Are you saying with processed meat that it is not, in your view, carcinogenic?
I don't say that it supports a sufficient relationship.
And they make it seem as though there's doubt about what we're talking about.
This is not a link, a causal link between red and processed meat and any type of cancer.
But would you recommend reducing meat intake?
No, not at all.
How on earth is the viewer supposed to make sense of all of this?
With overwhelming scientific evidence connecting animal foods to many of the most common deadly diseases, I discovered that the meat, dairy, and egg industries have engaged in a covert response, funding studies that deny this evidence while burying their involvement in the fine print. One of the hired guns paid to conduct these studies is Exponent Incorporated, a company whose research was used by the tobacco industry to deny the connection between secondhand smoke and cancer. For more than 50 years, Exponent has generated studies that challenge the health risks of everything from asbestos, arsenic, and mercury to animal foods.
The formula works beautifully for people selling food. It works beautifully for people selling drugs to treat the diseases that bad food causes. And it works beautifully for the media, which can give us a new story about diet every day.
Here we go again.
New guidelines are muddled and confusing, and not by accident.
The eggs are in.
So happy about the eggs.
I know, I am happy about the eggs.
Eating bacon is okay.
Absolutely.
Here we go! Look like all its hands!
Scott Jurek is one of the world's most accomplished ultra-marathoners. His latest quest, the Appalachian Trail. It takes most hikers 5 to 7 months. Jurek did it in 46 days, 8 hours, and 7 minutes. 3 hours faster than the previous record.
It's not about being the strongest and the biggest. It's really about what are you going to do with your strength and what are you going to do with the power that you have.